Glastonbury, a land steeped in mythology, legend, and ancient mysticism, where the veil between the natural and the supernatural is boundless. This ancient landscape embodies layers of spiritual and historical activity, acting as a divine beacon to people around the globe. The landscape provides sacred healing waters, earth energies, natural beauty, and legends whispering names like King Arthur, the Holy Grail, Jesus, and the Isle of Avalon. All these elements seem to weave their way through the fabric of the landscape and the geomantic consciousness and subconsciousness of Britain's people. There are echoes of perhaps a more sacred, harmonious, and chivalrous time. But how many of these mystical narratives and stories are true? What has morphed, merged, and changed as time has passed by? In April 2024, after spending time in Suffolk, exploring the Rendlesham UFO event, Orford Ness, and Sutton Hoo, I journeyed on to Somerset and Wiltshire to continue the exploration. I've always had a very loving connection to Glastonbury energetically. There have been times when upon visiting, my heart sings. I feel such warmth. I've always wondered why, whether it's the earth energies, the thinning of the veil of reality to other unseen worlds, or whether there's a deeper connection for me personally due to parallel or past life connections. People's opinions of this town can be mixed. Some view it as quite a heavy mix of light and dark. This can be a common scenario with energetic places. Light attracts high levels of darkness. Whether in the form of discarnate spirits or negative entities, these forces can all play havoc with people's energetic and physical experiences. Glastonbury, like some places, could be viewed as a place of ceremony. Experience what you came for and then leave. There is a common pattern of individuals moving to these energetically powerful places. And then, after a few years as permanent residents, the landscape can cause havoc in their lives, spitting them out the other end, repelling them. This often happens via a tower moment or a dark night of the soul. Good morning, sports fans. I'm reporting live to you from a secret location. It's not that secret, it's just I don't know exactly where it is. I think it's just outside Warminster. So it's quite convenient. It's right in between Glastonbury and Avebury. And I think today I'm going to head west. I'm going to head towards Glastonbury. I left the bosom of East Anglia yesterday, sort of packed my tent up, probably about 3 or 4 hours drive yesterday. And I feel a bit of a fraud actually, because I've decided to discontinue the camping idea and I've upgraded myself to glamping. But it's not total glamping because I'm in a shed. It has a heater and it has a kettle. Sorry, there's a train going by. It's been very noisy. You're spoiling the nature. Anyway, but yeah, it was well needed. I was feeling a little bit tired with the cold. So I'm being a wuss and I'm staying with more creature comforts, put it like that. And yeah, so I'm going to head off to Castle Cary first before going to Glastonbury. And weirdly, I've been to Castle Cary many times before. As a freelancer, I designed quite a bit for Clark's, the shoe company, and Castle Cary is the nearest station to the headquarters of Clark's, which is based in Street, just outside Glastonbury. So strangely, I've been there many times. But now I'm be returning a bit more of a weirdo with a pendulum. Yeah, so I'm going to go there first. Going to go specifically to a hill called Lodge Hill. And after I've done that, this is based off some of my map dowsing. This is the location I was given through the pendulum. So I'm going to honour that. I don't know what's going to be there, whether it's going to be energy or more just a spectacle in terms of good sights and a good location to walk to. Who knows? And then after that, yonder to Glastonbury. And I've been there quite a few times before. And it's interesting, people always call it the heart chakra of the earth. The idea, as above, so within. And yeah, I think it's, every time I've been there, as I've been more spiritual, my heart has sung when I've been walking around Glastonbury. So there's definitely something very potent, very energetic. Obviously you get the springs there as well, which a few years ago I took a dip in. It was incredibly cold, but very invigorating.
And the very first time I went there was actually for the Glastonbury festival as a teenager. And even then, before I became spiritual and stuff, there was a real energy, palpable energy about the place that just kind of really viscerally sort of struck my body. I always remember that. So anyway, I better get going. I'll catch you in a bit. I have arrived at Castle Cary. The village, which I've never been to before, I always went to the train station, is very pretty. And I'm trying to get up Lodge Hill. It's one of those frustrating situations. I can't find a way up. It's just like a gazillion fences in my way. I hate fences. So yeah, I'm a bit lost. I think I have found the way. This is looking promising. Where I was going before was heading towards a school, and it was lunchtime. And yeah, it seemed very not the correct way, put it like that. We have a steep incline. I can do that.
Throughout this odyssey, as part of my planning to decide on locations to visit, I utilised map dowsing, in combination with a pendulum. One specific area the pendulum pointed me towards was Lodge Hill, which overlooks the picturesque small town of Castle Cary. This was a location I never thought to visit until the pendulum suggested it, but energetically, something very powerful was waiting for me there. The market town of Castle Cary in Somerset, southwest United Kingdom, is a 30-minute drive from Glastonbury. Standing on Lodge Hill, you can see Glastonbury off in the distance. The town gets its name from Cary Castle, a castle made from wood and stone that was situated on this very site, with ancient earthworks surrounding the hill. It's claimed the fort was either built by Walter Douay or his son, Robert. Walter, it's said, was a Norman knight and probably fought in the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Overall, he owned large swathes of land in the southwest of England as a result of the Norman conquest. Over time, others laid siege to the castle and took it over on various occasions. Eventually, the castle was abandoned around 1468 when a larger mansion house was built adjacent to the site of the castle. The castle was eventually demolished by the end of the 18th century. Older architecture of note includes an old market building and 3 churches, but most interestingly, in the centre of town, there is a small circular prison named the Roundhouse. There is an interesting premise about whether prisons or sites of execution were deliberately placed over unharmonious earth energies to purposely cause spiritual or physical dissonance to the occupants. Whether this is the intended effect for the Roundhouse, I'm unsure.
Let's not forget, I was sent here by my pendulum. I had no intention to come to Castle Cary at all, but I was just asked the question a few days ago before this trip, where Where should I go in it? Recommended here. Now we're getting biblical. There's 3 crosses. Whoa. Who knows what's going on here? That's intense. I'm sure we'll see why there are 3 crosses here in a moment. So top of the hill, Lodge Hill, has a platform, convenient platform. Looks like it's built in the 2000s. Has a small telescope there. Actually, having got up here, I'm feeling nice, energy-wise. My heart is buzzing a little bit, more of the sort of top parts of my body. It's just, strange because you're directly underneath like a really dirty electrical line. I don't like electrical lines, it really badly affects my skin. That is really nice. So mad. Yeah, it's just real loving energy. My heart's buzzing, all the top part of my body. Yeah, it's a bit emotional actually. Yeah, it's quite strong. I wasn't expecting that at all. In many ways the hill looks really mundane and it's just littered with stuff. It's just got pylons over it. It's not the sense of beauty, but the energy, whoa, really palpable. And then this way, the camera go all the way there. Maybe, can you go? Yeah, you can follow me. Keep going. I might be obscured by the railings. Yuck. That's dirty energy. Dirty mobile phone mast. Ironically, the camp place I'm in at the moment has got terrible mobile phone reception, which has irritated me. Yeah, oh well. I just took another moment there to, stand in the energy of that hill. Really nice. Really nice. I mean, I keep saying this, but a complete surprise. Again, just didn't know what to expect. Such a lovely feeling.
The energy I felt at the top of Lodge Hill could again point towards a sacred site that predates any building of castles or forts. Some of these sites could have been used for sun worship and other spiritual ceremonies. The surrounding area is flat and can be described as feminine in nature. Meanwhile, the phallic form of Lodge Hill creates a powerful male expression of the location, forming a node of energy. This is based on things I've read and relates back to other personal experiences. The opposite can also occur, with a dominantly hilly land representing masculine energy and a minority flat land embodying the feminine, creating another kind of power spot. So the question is the energy personal to me? A remembrance from a past life? Is it earth energies? Or the embodiment of energy focused by previous generations through ceremony and conflict? This singular experience was a profound reminder of map dowsing and the power of it, by allowing the land to direct, to inform your navigation through the landscape, connecting you with experiences you didn't intend to have. So after meandering back down the hill to my car, I now headed onwards to Glastonbury, through the green and very pleasant roads of Somerset.
Good afternoon from a very sunny, tranquil, beautiful, relaxing Glastonbury. Glastonbury is literally underneath me. I'm lying on it at the moment. I'm in the Abbey, Glastonbury Abbey, which I've never been to before, and it is chill. 100% levels of relaxation, 100% levels of beauty. I'm feeling good. I've had a little pootle down the high street. Obviously I've bought some sage and some frankincense. That's part of the parcel every time I come here. And initially thought the Glastonbury Abbey was closed, but it's actually open. The main entrance is closed, so they had a different entrance to get in. But the energies here have been quite, not initially as powerful as I thought it was going to be in terms of heart-centered. But, since I come to the gardens here feeling really relaxed, whole body as a whole sort of fizzing with energy, but just, really lovely. Just been generally kind of meandering around the gardens, and they are beautiful. And I don't know a huge amount about the Glastonbury Abbey. I did read a book about the sacred geometry once, and it was talking about how the geometry of the Abbey is based on, it's using sacred geometry, and is based on the New Jerusalem, heaven essentially. It was kind of built into the architecture. And a lot of it's ruined now, unfortunately. But the context around it is really stunning. Just the gardens are really peaceful. So I'm going to spend a few more minutes here, and then I'm going to walk up to the springs, the Whitewater Springs, and then hopefully the tour towards the end as well. But so far, feeling good.
Glastonbury has featured prominently in my life, more so than most towns in the United Kingdom, despite never having lived nearby. My first visit was for the famous Glastonbury Festival, long before spirituality became part of my daily life. Even back then, as my 18-year-old self, I remember feeling the energy very palpably, standing in front of the pyramid stage, of all places. Then, years later, I spent time going back and forth for work whilst living in London, working as a freelance designer for Clark Shoes, headquartered in Street, just outside of Glastonbury. Now, in the more spiritual phase of my life, I've been returning to these lands to explore Glastonbury's hidden history and to understand more of the magical effect of these powerful earth energies that dance across the landscape. Each return trip always seems to reveal something new to me. Energetically, some people consider Glastonbury to be a vortex, usually denoting the intersection of ley lines. Notably, the famous male St. Michael and female Mary line weave across the land, stretching from Cornwall to the east of the island of Britain. The town is an eclectic convergence of New Age spirituality, Gnostic Christianity, witchcraft, druidry, megaliths and earth energies. It is probably one of the few town centres in the United Kingdom that hasn't succumbed to the dominance of global and national chains, keeping the independent spirit alive. For this particular journey, having never visited Glastonbury Abbey before, it was the first place I walked to. Apart from the obvious beauty of the Abbey and its surroundings, the stories surrounding this place, the focal point of Glastonbury, are steeped in so much legend. Stories are probably the most important part of Glastonbury, whether they are true or not true. Glastonbury and this Abbey acts as a real physical anchor for these subconscious narratives that weave through humanity. It feels there are so many infinite ways to view Glastonbury and its legends. I'm a complete novice to the deep stories that emanate from this land. I'm briefly describing what I've come across, and what I've experienced, what I felt on an energetic and emotional level. But I believe it would be a great exploration for remote viewers to unpick some of the finer details and aspects of these legends to see under blind conditions what they can perceive, and maybe tune out some of the informational noise. But back to the legends. In a book titled Dimensions of Paradise by legendary counterculture author John Mitchell, in it he argued that the ancient cultures used a numerical code of harmonies and proportions throughout society, from architecture to statecraft, music and art. Mitchell proposed that many ancient architectural sites from the ancient world to the Christian era harnessed the same sacred numerical ethos. Sites like Stonehenge and Glastonbury Abbey, he said, use sacred geometry based on the heavenly city, New Jerusalem. Stumbling upon the potential alleged grave of King Arthur and Guinevere that day, and even leading up to it, I'd been mulling over the idea of Englishness. Is national identity important, given that maybe we are eternal beings moving through physical reality, perhaps even beyond this earthly realm? Do these human constructs even matter? But there seemed to be, at the time, and still now, through the legends of King Arthur, the ideas of healing, Avalon, and the ancient land of Albion, stretching back beyond the Saxons and the Roman Empire to a more mystical time. Some consider Glastonbury Abbey may have had importance as a religious site from Celtic and even pre-Celtic times. Although most mainstream academia would dispute this, they do describe evidence stemming from Romans and Saxons during their occupations. In the 12th century, medieval historian and monk William of Malmesbury popularised early legends that Joseph of Arimathea, a biblical figure in the New Testament, a wealthy man and a secret follower of Jesus, was allowed to take Jesus from the cross and bury him in his own tomb. Malmesbury reported that Joseph travelled to Britain and founded Glastonbury Abbey in the 1st century. This is also where the legend of the Holy Grail originates, the sacred cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper, which was said to contain the blood of Christ. Some legends suggest that the sacred spring water of Glastonbury has its iron-derived red colour because of Christ's blood. Other stories claim Joseph eventually died and was buried in Glastonbury with 2 cups, one containing Christ's sweat and the other his blood. Joseph's tomb was allegedly discovered in 1345, then lost and rediscovered numerous times, until the tomb was eventually moved to St. John's Church in Glastonbury in 1928. There are probably so many varied interpretations and variances of this tale, but these are the ones that I've uncovered. If we look at the mainstream timeline, it roughly lists 63 AD as the legendary foundation of the church. though it is stated official records show the Saxons building the church by the end of the 7th century. The structure continued to change and morph over the ages, with the 11th and 12th centuries being the Abbey's most active time, and when it was at the height of its wealth and power. This period also saw the resurfacing and popularisation of the Arthurian legend by resident monks, linked to their supposed discovery of the lost graves of King Arthur and Guinevere. It is a common belief that the monks amplified the narratives of King Arthur and Joseph of Arimathea to elevate the Abbey's status and wealth, which has led many to cast doubt on some or all of these legends. Unfortunately, in 1184, a great fire engulfed the Abbey, destroying the structure and many of the precious relics inside. The Lady Chapel was constructed shortly after the fire and continued to be a place of pilgrimage. Eventually, in the 16th century, Henry VIII dissolved all monasteries. The remnants of the abbey were eventually stripped of their relics and building materials, leaving the abbey in ruins. By the 19th century, the history and the relevance of Glastonbury were rediscovered, and this is where excavations and preservation of the site began. This work continues to this day, and Glastonbury Abbey remains a focal point for tourists and pilgrims alike. King Arthur is an enduring hero of the medieval period, and the energy and the mythology around this enigmatic character have only grown over time. Arthur became a powerful figurehead for many political and military causes over hundreds of years. In some ways, Arthur is a messianic figure, a symbol of a Celtic saviour, which spans this divided island of Britain from Scotland, England and Wales. He is a unifying figure and even features in ancient Welsh poetry by Taliesin and Aneurin. The story may have been orally passed down through the generations via Celtic ancient languages. Apparently, the earliest recorded evidence of Arthur was in Latin. Geoffrey of Monmouth, according to some, helped popularise Arthur and his divine connection in battling the invading Saxons and unifying the divided land of Britain. Jesus is perceived as being complete peace and loving forgiveness. Though Arthur is supposed to embody these qualities, there is an undeniable militaristic and violent component to his story. Even Arthur's birth is perceived as divinely ordained in Tintagel, Cornwall, involving Merlin, a supernatural wizard and prophet. Merlin prophetically saw the birth of Arthur as a unifying king of the island. He was instrumental in the conception, uniting King Uther Pendragon and Igraine, even though Igraine was already betrothed to Duke Gorwar of Cornwall. Upon Arthur's birth, his identity was hidden to protect him from rivals and enemies, and Arthur wasn't aware of his destiny until later on in his life. Then there are stories of Excalibur, the sword of legend that symbolises Arthur's divine connection, his prophesied protection, and the unifying of the island of Britain. Various versions depict whether pulling the sword from the stone, signifying his divine right to rule, or the sword being perceived as a magical weapon granted to him by the Lady of the Lake. The sword is said to have magical powers, rendering Arthur invisible in battle, so Arthur's power is not only physical, but divinely protected by other realms. Apart from his birth, other biblical parallels include Arthur's 12 Knights of the Round Table and Jesus' 12 disciples, as well as both figures' prophesied resurrections. Glastonbury Abbey features in some accounts where Arthur has visions of the Virgin Mary and uses her as a form of divine protection during battle. She's even featured on his shield. Along with his sword, his wife Queen Guinevere is central to the story. Their marriage is not only viewed as political, unifying the lands, but also significant on a deep emotional level. Later elements in the Arthur story involve Guinevere having a love affair with one of Arthur's knights, Lancelot. This plot highlights the tension between love, desire, loyalty, and duty. Eventually, this version of events sparks the downfall of Camelot, triggering civil war within the kingdom. This weakening of the union leads to the final Battle of Camelot, where Arthur is mortally wounded, leading to the eventual disintegration of Camelot. Arthur is taken to the mystical land of Avalon, where he is healed by his half-sister, Morgan Le Fay. According to some accounts, Arthur isn't dead, but healing from his wounds in his magical place. From a reincarnation perspective, you could view this as a soul moving into the astral or another dimension, a liminal space. This is where some make the connection that Glastonbury is Avalon. Although for the most part, Avalon seems to be a place beyond the physical, perhaps in the spiritual realms. This brings us to the prophecy of King Arthur's return to save Britain during its greatest need, once again acting as a unifying force. This was also prophesied by Merlin and conveyed in many legends afterwards. Glastonbury always seems to claim the banner of Avalon, even though it's never really given a specific location. So, in reality to some, Avalon could be anywhere, perhaps not even in this physical reality. That said, the veil between realities is very thin in Glastonbury. There is a powerful, unique interaction between sacred spring water, earth energies, topography, and geology. Due to the iron-tainted spring waters, some have linked this to the uptick in paranormal activities. Perhaps there is a destabilizing effect on the electromagnetic fields, which could allow other realities to bleed into the physical. Again, due to the intersection of ley lines and earth energies, it is common in New Age circles to refer to Glastonbury as a vortex of energy, similar to Sedona in the United States, Cairo in Egypt, or Uluru in Australia, to name a few. The majority of the flat land surrounding Glastonbury is a floodplain. This would have meant in ancient times there were a series of islands, much like the Avalonian myth. The connection to apple trees comes from Welsh mythology and etymology. Apples and the county of Somerset are so physically and emotionally intertwined. Alcoholic cider is a very popular drink in these lands. In my own thoughts, I find it interesting to compare the symbolism of the Garden of Eden, Eve's temptation by the apple tree, with Guinevere's infidelity. This is where my thoughts on King Arthur's revival, popularised by male Christian monks, come in. How much perhaps was the story distorted over time by their biases and mainstream state-sanctioned Christian beliefs? Is there a less militaristic, patriarchal way to view the Arthurian legends, with the male Arthur and female Guinevere perhaps alchemising energy and acting as a twin flame union, to use modern day New Age parlance? Could they create a harmonising effect on the landscape? In a recent Reconsider Simon podcast, I was discussing information from an experiencer in Australia, George Cavasilis. This may be outside the realms of reasonable information for some, but his perspective considered King Arthur to embody a faint spark of the consciousness of Jesus. Not fully, but there was a faint thread of connection between the two beings. His perspective was that humanity had fallen so much during the Dark Ages, Arthur had to return to realign humanity on the best timeline. Plus, Excalibur was not necessarily a sword of physical strength or prowess to rule, but rather a symbolic of spiritual powers, of a complete understanding of the spiritual and physical forces. Obviously, these are all external saviours, and for some now, it's all about reigniting the higher levels of consciousness within ourselves, so we all embody the spiritual elements of Arthur or Jesus internally, no longer giving our power away. Controversially, have the spiritual roles been reversed? It was Cavasilis' opinion that figures such as Mary Magdalene were the true embodiments of Christ consciousness, with Jesus acting more as an emissary. This could be completely off the mark, but given the many inversions in our perspectives and understandings, it's probably wise to consider such ideas. On that same thread, would Guinevere then take more of a central spiritual role in the legends? Bringing in popular cultural ideas, which I always view as echoes of humanity's subconscious and past lives, the fantasy television series The Wheel of Time from the books of the same name by Robert Jordan features a powerful organisation of women known as the Aes Sedai, who can channel the One Power. This could be viewed as a more literal physical representation of chi energy, prana, or organ. Only women can wield this energy, and they have a deep bond with a male counterpart, a male protector called a warder, who is a physical manifestation of male energy, preventing harm to the female channeler of the One Power. More established religious traditions are very much hierarchical and patriarchal, but could this be an inversion of what may have occurred in the ancient times? Looking at the less structured culture of what we could loosely be deemed as the New Age, in my small experience, is very much dominated by women. They seem to have a more nurturing connection to spiritual realms. Again, I'm speculating, but on the other hand, if Arthur truly existed and was born during a very dark and violent time, maybe the strong arm of a sword was the only way to reposition humanity on a better trajectory. I've always considered Tibet a deeply spiritual land, sitting there meditating for the majority of the day, with no army to speak of. Yet eventually China just walked in and relatively easily took over. I'm no advocate for violence, but maybe there is a call for forceful male energy to say no, this isn't going to happen, to act as a protectorate. Maybe there always has to be a balance. But in contrast, looking at figures such as Gandhi, whose advocacy for non-violence and non-compliance managed to eventually repel British rule. I think there are questions about the stories of Jesus visiting Glastonbury with Mary Magdalene, and how these overlap with Arthur and Guinevere. Are they different individuals from different times, or are they essentially the reincarnated essence of these biblical characters, sent to this reality to stabilise humanity? Again, these are wild speculations. It was only during the course of researching for this video that I started to look into the ideas and connections to William Blake. Admittedly, I'm not a literature person. I predominantly read non-fiction, so my awareness of William Blake was very limited. But upon discovering some of his works integrating ideas of Arthur, Glastonbury, Britain, and spirituality, I was bowled over by how much he resonates with me. These are such strong, profound spiritual messages that are so relevant for these times. William Blake lived from 1757 to 1827 and was a Renaissance man. His output was diverse, from poet to painter to printmaker, using a wide variety of ideas garnered from mysticism. He is apparently best known for his poetry work, but he also created illuminated books, which combined a mixture of poems with detailed engravings. His work heavily relied on symbolism, utilising biblical themes, mystical figures, and complex allegories. He was an advocate for many social causes and was extremely critical of the Industrial Revolution, viewing it as dehumanising. He also very much rejected organised religion and the institutionalised church, and was also highly critical of the church for distorting the image of Jesus. But he passionately believed in the power of the human imagination as a way to connect with divine spiritual forces. Blake saw Britain as the land of Albion, a place more in harmony with spiritual realms. One of Blake's most famous poems is Jerusalem. And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green? And was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth upon our clouded hills? And was Jerusalem builded here, among those dark satanic mills? Bring me my bow of burning gold, bring me my arrows of desire, bring me my spear, O clouds unfold, bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. Blake was very much speaking to the legends of Joseph of Arimathea, visiting Britain and bringing Christianity here, particularly the idea that Jesus was brought here as a child. Jerusalem is a symbol of Britain's spiritual faith, and heavily points towards Britain as a renewed, uncorrupted, divine land reborn. Blake's Jerusalem and Glastonbury is where spiritual forces meet the physical heaven and earth. In terms of King Arthur, Blake perceived him as a mythical character, searching for the Holy Grail, and on this journey, seeking spiritual enlightenment. Arthur holds a very special position of bridging the gap between pagan and Christian ideas. Arthur's struggles highlight the battle within us all, between light and darkness, good and evil. When Arthur travels to Avalon, it's a poetic allegory of his soul's return to source. Like Merlin and others, Blake prophesies that Arthur, or his spirit, would return, bringing with him a spiritual revival in Britain. For the most part, this particular trip to Glastonbury was dominated by the Glastonbury Abbey experience and concepts relating to King Arthur. But of course, there are also the Chalice Well Gardens, a stunning place for contemplation. Its healing, potent red spring waters apparently emanate from deep within the earth, and again, it has connections to Joseph of Arimathea. On that very day, as the sun shone brightly, I was considering ideas to do with King Arthur and Englishness. Little did I know how profound it would hit me that it was actually St. George's Day. This isn't usually an event I tend to think about, but I thought it was a very interesting, powerful synchronicity. Then there's the Tor. Glastonbury Tor looms large over Glastonbury, and no trip is complete without a view across the Glastonbury fields from this elevated position. The view and the tower is iconic, and it's ingrained as a very powerful symbol of this land. In terms of the idea of the Isle of Avalon, when the area is surrounded by water, this very much would have been an island. Many believe there was a close connection between King Arthur and the bridging of the gap between Avalon and the physical world. The single tower that now remains is the remnants of St. Michael's Church, which was destroyed during an earthquake in the 13th century. People see this as a focal point for vortex energy and ley lines. From my point of view, however, the most powerful energetic experience I had that day was at Lodge Hill in Castle Cary. The Tor's Hill is very neatly sculptured, with terraces. To me, it seems to form a teardrop or an eye shape. Similar sculptured hills near sacred sites in Wiltshire and Sussex have always caught my attention. I've often wondered what the energetic or spiritual mechanism is. Mainstream explanations would always point towards agriculture, but I believe there's an energetic or spiritual mechanism at work. Some perceive the tower on the Tor as a nefarious architectural spiking of a divine energy line, subverting its power over the land around it. It's always a magical view, although for me, I've never had a particularly energetic experience there, but that doesn't mean the energy doesn't exist. The idea of the landscape being shaped into a large-scale symbolic map of the astrological zodiac is a very bold one. A while back, I read a book titled A Guide to Glastonbury's Temple of Stars by Katherine Maltwood, a Canadian artist. During the course of this book and others, she describes the meaning and likelihood of a huge astrological zodiac symbols being shaped into the fabric of the landscape. She moved to Chiltern Priory, which is 8 miles away from Glastonbury. There was a resurgence in the popularity of the Arthurian legends in the 19th century, particularly within the arts and craft movement. For her, like many others, the legends were symbolic, full of meaning and symbolism, and were a reflection of the collective unconscious. Arthur's search for the Holy Grail was seen as highly significant because it symbolised a search for self-fulfilment of the soul. Part of Maltwood's research concerning the Holy Grail was taken from a translated Norman French document. The unknown author clearly describes the local terrain along with Glastonbury Abbey. Maltwood used the text to create a map of Arthur's adventures across the landscape. She firmly believed the giant creatures the knights fought existed in the form of massive earthworks laid out in a circular pattern. She had this to say about uncovering the mystery. I shall never forget my utter amazement when the truth dawned on me that the outline of the lion was drawn by the curves of the Cary River below the old capital town of Somerset. So that was the origin of the legendary lion I'd been questing, a nature effigy and a god of sun worshippers, Leo of the Zodiac. Obviously, if the lion was a nature effigy, then the dragon, griffin, and the giants, etc., must be likewise. Perhaps this was the most thrilling moment of my discovery. She eventually came to the heady conclusion that the knights who were hunting nature gods were actual Christian reincarnations of the gods they were questing, with King Arthur representing Hercules, the sun god, Sir Lancelot with characteristics of the lion, and Sir Gawain embodying the ram. To solidify and help her with her research, she used maps and commissioned a series of aerial photographs to be taken. The zodiac symbols were etched into the landscape from hills, earthworks, roads, footpaths, rivers and streams. She claimed that if you placed a planisphere over the diagram, all the constellations married up with the effigies. From her perspective, Glastonbury was, and still is, a solar temple. She concluded that the temple of stars in the landscape detailed the process of nature's cycles, the sun's death and rebirth. The whole landscape was shaped on an already sacred ground by ancient Sumer Chaldean priests from the Euphrates Valley in Mesopotamia, who had very unique scientific, religious, artistic, and agricultural knowledge. There is evidence in Welsh mythology Glastonbury, the Vale of Avalon, was considered the kingdom of the dead. Then, with the advent of Christianity, it changed into the Christian Grail. Basically, from her research, she decoded that the original sun god became King Arthur, with the round zodiac being the iconic round table. She was convinced these British mysteries and the ancient wisdom in the zodiac would restore the true traditions, glory, and destiny of the people. The power of these effigies was revealed in her writing. Beautiful and alluring as this Somerset heaven on earth may be, yet it is only a model of the universe around us. This archaic calendar is the formula for something infinitely more marvellous. The ritual of its mystery religion was the shadowing forth of universal laws by priests who were astronomically minded scientists to whom it was recorded the youth of Europe flooded to be educated. Consequently, if these effigies can still in any way testify to the marvels they dimly represent, our ancestors' stupendous work will not have been in vain. It is profoundly important that it should be preserved. Katherine Maltwood's work admittedly can seem out there and otherworldly, such huge effigies etched into the landscape. Were these effigies unconsciously created by normal people working the land, unknowingly sculpturing a message to the wider people of Britain, indeed to the rest of humanity? Or did these ancient priests truly have access to technology we can't even describe or fathom? Or did they have access to deeper abilities in those ancient times and were able to shape the land as they saw fit, through focused manifestation in co-creation with the environment? Visiting Castle Cary and Glastonbury that day deepened my affection for the area. The cultural and spiritual significance of this land has been cemented even more in my consciousness. It's fascinating how Glastonbury acts as a physical location and a bridge between so many spiritual, cultural, and historical ideas. It's truly unique. There's nowhere else like it in the UK. Glastonbury Festival is probably one of the most largest cultural events in the world. I find it very profound that nearly 200,000 people make the pilgrimage of sorts every year. Is there something deeper going on with this celebration? Could we see a renaissance of some kind of spiritual movement as the world becomes more chaotic and oppressive? Could Glastonbury rebirth something? The idea of King Arthur has always seemed a bit cartoonish, but I'm beginning to understand the deeper spiritual significance of his story and what he represents. I'm an advocate for not relying on external heroes or saviours. Perhaps these legends are allegories for what is going on internally within ourselves. Maybe the revolution won't have a physical location or a focal figurehead, but will again be manifested for our own expanded perception of reality and who we are in this complex cosmic arena. I hope you enjoyed this brief exploration of Glastonbury. The next video to be released will cover Avebury and the surrounding areas in the ancient lands of Wiltshire. Please donate, subscribe, like and share. It all helps me grow and contribute to this strange and weird small bubble of the internet. Till next time, bye bye.